Hello and welcome back to Education on Fire. Today I'm delighted to be chatting to Boris Walbaum, and he's the founder and president of Forward College, an innovative higher education institution. He's an AI and future skills expert and former government advisor. Forward College created a degree designed for the AI era where students study in 3 countries, Lisbon, Paris and Berlin, over 3 years. Students earn a University of London degree while travelling in Europe but without setting foot in London. And it's also one of the first university leaders to actively encourage students to use AI. Now, Forward College is a university with no lecture halls, something that he believes should become the norm for universities. Boris is also the author of Excellent Isn't What You Think, a book on education and parenting in the age of AI. Hi, Boris. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Education on Fire podcast. AI is such an important thing. It's such a revolutionary thing. It's something which I think we all need to be not aware of, but know how it's going to be part and an integral part of our lives, and nothing more than the younger people coming through in this being their norm. So it's going to be such an important and interesting conversation, and really delighted to have you on to share your thoughts as well.
Hello, Mark. Thanks for having me.
So shall we start with college? Where does that fit in terms of your history, in terms of how do people get involved in that? Whereabouts do you, can the people take the courses that you're doing? How does that work?
You know, during my career, my very long career, I've been a civil servant, I've been a consultant and specializing in education at some point, also a social entrepreneur, working with high achievers from underprivileged background. And from whatever angle I was looking at education, I could see the gap between what the world expects for tomorrow and what education has to offer just widening. And try as I might as a consultant to help universities progress, improve, connect better to the world's needs, I was just seeing the world moving faster than universities. And so at some point, I think, if we can't fill the gap with the existing universities, we need new kind of universities to fill this gap. And hence the name Forward College, which is about how do you design education looking forward, actually, because when you think of it, education is mostly geared towards the past, towards accumulated knowledge. Research is completely separated from teaching. That's a reality. That's not what is always told. But you really start touching research in the 3rd year through dissertation. But most 80% of what you do in a university is really based on, acquiring knowledge that is already established, much more than looking forward, exploring future trends, experimenting the world, and so on and so forth. But we'll talk more about that, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That whole idea of exploring and having those sort of skills and understanding, as you quite rightly said. So, in terms of, you sort of touched on there about so much of the education system is industrial revolution based. It's still looking backwards, and I think one of the things that I was excited to see was your idea that AI is going to sort of has the opportunity to revolutionize things. That we're at a sort of a watershed moment. My only thought when I saw that was the fact that I also thought that when we had COVID, because it was that kind of everything was in person, schools are schools, they worked like they were, and all of a sudden we had this complete opportunity to change the way we did things because we were used to being online, the way that we learned, the hours that we did it, so many things were different. And whether it's a political reason or whatever the situation was, we ran as fast as we could back into the norm. And that might just be because of the global situation, but it seemed to me there was a watershed moment there to take things forward and analyze what we've done, but we seem to go the other way. So why do you think this particular watershed as AI will actually make that jump into it having to look different?
Because AI is an imitation technology, which makes it extraordinary because it's so easy to adopt AI and to use AI that there's never been a technology easier to use than AI, right? It's really natural language with chat, which is the most natural thing that humans do. But So in the chatting, in the language that is really core to how we communicate, how we express ourselves, but it's also now um, combined with robotics. And we've had robots for decades, but now we're thinking of robots as humanoids, so as things that will replace it based on what we do. So it's really an imitation technology. So it's much more threatening than even COVID, because it is about replacing us. That's how it is designed. And by the way, AI replicates how our brains work, right? With the neural networks and different layers and so on and so forth. As far as we know, the way it works is quite similar. So this is really disturbing for sure. And yeah, it affects also not only the how we teach, which was the case in COVID, but also what should we learn? Because obviously, if these LLMs are able to pass the most selective exams that we have, then why on earth spend 18 years going through these studies and making a huge effort, all that to end up being just as good as these machines today, which means that maybe tomorrow they will be much better than we will be. And then the why of education, because deep down, why should we learn altogether, as these machines are learning machines? And we talk about the training. What costs a lot of money in AI is training. So it's learning, right? And so it costs a lot of money for a model, much more than an individual education, but it's still about learning. So I think it's really disrupting the whole concept of education and what it should be about and why we should still be learning, which I believe, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I can see, like, it's almost like unless we embrace it and we understand all those concepts that you said, the net result is that it's going to do it for us, or society will be so far removed from education that those people that have adopted it will just be in a completely different have different opportunities to be able to, whether it's job related or learning related, because they'll understand that it's here, that there is no kind of sort of going back.
That's what all these tech bros sell. You should learn this technology, how to use it, and so on. We've worked on what does AI literacy mean. So if it's about learning with AI, in the end, deep down, it's about being able to ask questions and having critical thinking. So you go back to really basic intellectual skills that, to be honest, we don't value that much in education. Who values asking questions in education? Where do you have the opportunity to ask questions in education? There is a very interesting study that shows by how much students who start in kindergarten lose the propensity to ask questions in the first year. It's divided by 10. So it's just mind-boggling how our education system kills questioning. And the same with critical thinking. Writing an essay is not about critical thinking. I mean, to some extent, a little bit maybe, but most of it is about synthesizing different theories and know how to articulate arguments. It's more logic, right? But if you think of critical thinking, it would be, okay, here is a document. You're going to see the expert in 2 hours. What are the questions you want to ask them and why? This is critical thinking, right? But do we exercise this? Not really. So that's why I believe that AI can be an opportunity for us to reinvent or to reconnect education to its true mission, which is actually to develop the human talents that really make a difference.
And then it becomes a very exciting prospect, doesn't it? And the asking questions things is something I've spoken about a lot, because it's almost as if most children from a young age, but certainly as they then go through their education, they think that they're expected to know all the answers before they've understood it or they've been taught it, because it's frowned upon almost to kind of that sense, I don't know, because it's all about getting the proper grade and all those things that happen. So I love that sort of reframing of how that's so important. One other question which I think is also key is, you sort of mentioned that sense of we learn in a certain way to get to a certain point to then go to a certain college or university, and the fact that the whole thing could look different. How do you think that works from a society point of view? If we take here in the UK, if we think about the number of ministers, people in government, they all went to the same universities, the same colleges, and there's the social and class system that is associated with that, whether you talk about the intellect or the courses that they took and all that sort of stuff. There's that sense of this is where you need to be in order for that to help you further in your career, aside from the knowledge or, like you say, the critical thinking or the skills that you have.
Mark, when I started Forward College, I thought my case is so obvious that we will have so many students applying to Forward College. And there is an expression in Italian that says, ci sarà un perché. So if something is not happening, innovation in education, there is a reason. There is a reason. And this reason is exactly what you say, that people have representations. They have a vision of what success means based on their own experience. And basically, education is decided by people who are in a position of power. So it's a reproductive system by design. So actually, disrupting education is very, very difficult. And it only happens when there is a real revolution. Last time we did that is because of the industrial revolution. But have we had any revolution since then? Not really. When you think of it, at least in France, and I don't know exactly the situation in the UK, but you can't take any course in psychology. You have to go through, in middle school, twice the explanation on how volcanoes work and the tectonic plates and so on. So very complex subduction and so on. I've been through that with my kids. You never get the chance to study your own volcano, your emotions. That's what psychology does. So this is a very basic fact that we should be surprised about that. We should be challenging, especially at a time where mental health is so much of a topic for all parents, for all teenagers, but for all parents also. So it's a huge political problem, and we seem to evade it because the education is framed in a way that is reproductive. And the thing is, with AI, we now feel that the world will be shifting. And then what? Should we change education? Do we see that happening? Not really, to my taste. But I think it will have to shift. So I do believe this is an opportunity. It would be a shock. But now it's the time for aspirations. When I go to conferences, a lot about aspirations. We should do this and we should do that. But universities are governed in a way that is really not easy for them to change. So I think it might take more time than we have.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the time thing is a really important one, isn't it? Because so many governments, so many political systems, they're on a 4-year cycle, a 5-year cycle. They have to get done whatever they can do, and so that's the thing that they have that thing. There's no sort of cross-party consensus that says we need the education system to look like this. If not now, certainly in the next year, 5 years, 10 years, or whatever that happens to be. And I think part of that is because they don't believe it's possible. And I think also because there's a certain amount of, there's obviously a financial side to it, but there's also a sense of we need to control what's going on. I mean, so for example, here we are in a heat wave here in the middle of the summer, and they close the schools, or many schools are closed. So from what I can understand, the big impact is on the parents, because many parents are at work, and then within a day's notice, it's kind of life has to look different because you can't do that. And a lot of the things I've heard from the education side was the fact that, well, we can't do school in the heat. And you think, well, you can't do normal school in the heat because you can't do PE this afternoon because it's like 35 degrees, and you probably shouldn't be in the classroom because it's baking and you've got windows and all that kind of thing. But you probably could find a shady spot and read a book and do something different, except the fact that if you don't have that in your immediate setup, you probably then would need some kind of safeguarding and health and safety register to take you out of the school gates and take you into a park. And so, like I say, the system isn't there to be reactive to anything that's going on. And it just struck me that sort of our current situation is sort of showing this in its kind of most human setup, really.
Yeah, it's a very good point that you're making, and it shows how everyone has become a prisoner of this system, that teachers do not feel empowered to innovate and do things that are meaningful. Students go there just because it's compulsory. And I think COVID has opened, a window of opportunity for, in a way, students to think about maybe it's not that compulsory, maybe it's not that necessary. So the challenging perspective. And we see that absenteeism is rising. In higher education, it's a crisis, but also in school. So the parents see their kids not being happy, wondering how on earth the system will actually prepare them for the future. So everyone feels somehow imprisoned in a system that is not effective anymore, that doesn't create joy, that doesn't create curiosity, that doesn't generate so much critical thinking, that doesn't nurture, positive relationships among people. And God knows if we need that. So in the end, we need to acknowledge that and say, okay, now what do we want to do with education?
And we sort of touched on the idea of jobs and what it will look like. I think that the add-on to what I was saying before was also that sense of the job market, business itself needs people coming into their businesses, understanding and being able to talk and function in a way that you've been talking about, because that has to be the future. It has to be the way that they develop. And I know that's one of the chapters of your book in terms of looking at that sort of how those things fit together. So do you see a way, let's assuming that this education system isn't going to change this year, and therefore those students going through this sort of revolution despite that, do you see a way that businesses can help out? Can you see a way maybe like from a parental point of view, is the way you can take a certain amount of control to sort of help you sort of get in that decision? And I guess all answers lead back to Forward College, but but you understand what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I think business can tell you what they need today. Business nowadays cannot tell you what they will need in 5, 10 years' time.
Yeah.
So it is a risk, and it is a risk for parents and students to decide whether they want to be in the short-termism, meaning we want to prepare our students for jobs in AI, for instance. Well, who knows what jobs in AI will look like at a time where self-reinforcement mechanisms are building the new AI. Or you just want to make sure that the ROI thing. So the ROI is about having a job at the end of this program. Yes, you might get one if you're lucky, but then the job will be disrupted. It will be completely changed, and you're not trained in a way that makes you sustainably valuable on the job market. And there is a long-term perspective, which is, again, going back to what are the human talents that will always have value. And this is, at some point, a bet that you can make. What is at McKinsey, when I was a consultant, we in strategy, we were thinking in terms of when there is an uncertain environment, what is the no regret move that you can make? What is the move that whatever happens, you will not regret? And these no regret moves are the transversal skills, the foundational skills that are the roots of your learning system. So if you have good critical thinking, good abilities, good curiosity, ability to ask questions, if you know how to do inquiry, if you know how to apply theory, if you know how to build trust among human beings, if you know how to collaborate in a team, if you know how to manage your emotions and be aware of your emotions, if you are resilient, if you are good at self-efficacy, if you know how you make decisions, you'll be able to learn. These are the roots that will help you develop the branches, the technical skills that you will need in the moment, but that you cannot anticipate. So that's why at Forward College, we very much believe we have a human intelligence framework, cognitive intelligence, social intelligence, emotional intelligence, practical intelligence, which is practical intelligence is what do you do when you don't know, which is a lot of what we do in real life, right? Like typically decision making. And we have the skills that describe these intelligences. And each course is mapped on these intelligences. Of course, our students study economics. Of course, our students study data science, psychology, business, whatever, political science. But all the learning outcomes are about these foundational skills, because we know that whatever they learn, what matters is developing this ability to question, this ability to make decisions, and so on and so forth. And that's what gives you long-term ROI as a future employee. And I don't see, that's what, by the way, OECD says, that's what the World Economic Forum says, but I wouldn't, the business, it's because they have done research, and they are not only just, surveying companies, they are doing more than that. They are experts. And I think if you ask the answer to the business, especially at that time where things move fast, you will have, changing answers, and you can't build an education system on changing answers.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I guess, I mean, I'm a real advocate for kind of broad curriculum, arts and I'm a musician myself, so anything anything music related, I'm all for, because so many of the skills that you talked about came that I learned because I was a musician. So I guess those are the sorts of things which, fundamentally, even now, if they were put back into the curriculum with the same sort of focus as some of the other things, would start to help, even if someone feels like we can't, give the silver bullet we need to change it overnight.
Yeah, and the example of music is very interesting, because I started as a classical piano player. And at some point, I decided, because it's so difficult to take a music sheet and to play a sonata by Beethoven, you need at least 5 weeks. I mean, if it's a challenging piece, you need 5 weeks of work, and it's really hard work, and you don't get pleasure, before 5 weeks, right? And after 10 weeks, you forgot it, and you need to redo it. So I started playing jazz, and jazz, it's very interesting, because it's really about, you develop the roots because you understand the harmony, you understand the rules. How do you switch from one chord to the next? You understand the beats, and then you can improvise. And we will need to improvise. We will have to look much more like, jazzmen or women than classical players. I often take also the image of sailing. Our world has been remarkably stable, and it looks like regatta sailing. You have the three buoys, and you go around, and it's really about optimizing your sail and optimizing your navigation, but by the degree. It's really the 1 degree will make a difference. If you do ocean racing, it's completely different. Of course, you will check your sails and your navigation, but it's about reading the clouds, reading the wind, reading the waves, and listening to the weather forecast. And you are not sure what will be the route that you will take. There are a lot of things that are uncertain, and you always try to navigate this. And the skills that you need for ocean racing are completely different from regatta. You need to make much more decisions when it's ocean racing in uncertainty. You need to be much more resilient. So they are. It's completely different. And being trained for ocean racing is not like being trained for regattas. Now we train students for regattas. You will be very good at marketing this. In marketing, you will be very good at doing this kind of data analysis or the economic modeling or whatever. But will you be good at doing something else? And the ability to go from one area to the other, you go through these foundational skills, which is actually the ability to understand concepts, to make decisions, etc., that I was referring to just earlier.
And from your experience, in terms of sort of having sort of created this, what does that look like practically? People think of colleges, universities, you've got lecture halls, you've got lots of things being given to you, all that kind of setup. I know that can't be the case in terms of what you've done. So what does it look like, sound like, feel like for someone who attends?
I always say that Forward College, I wanted to make Forward College as the most intense experience possible, because I think this emerging adulthood is a fantastic moment. It's the first moment where you get some autonomy, and you actually end up developing your brain. So there is a lot that is still soft, but by 25, your social ideas, social representations, ideology, type of friends you belong, and so on will be somehow defined. So it's an amazing thing, and that's a moment where you can experiment because you are not still exposed. You can still fail. So the whole idea is that. So the first thing is that we take them through 3 countries. Year 1 in Lisbon, year 2 in Paris, year 3 in Berlin. So we always tell students, this is a journey. This is ocean racing. It's not the regatta. You go around your buoys. No, this is real life. You go through a real ocean. So one is that, it will be discomforting. You will have to adapt. And actually, they often go to forward college because it's exciting to be in a 3-year, 3-country program, being surrounded by students from so many different nationalities, because the biggest nationality accounts for 12% of the overall cohort. So there is no, everybody is a foreigner there, and you need to adjust constantly. So this kind of constant adaptation is something important. But it's also, traveling is also about getting revealed by new environments. Sometimes you connect more with the culture than your own, and it reveals something in you. When I spent 6 months in Brazil at the French embassy for an internship, I just felt so comfortable with the abraço. You just hug, and they do so much of this, and it's so warm. You feel filled by this warmth. And then I went back to France, it felt like freezing. It's freezing cold, especially in Paris, as you can imagine. So and that's revealed something, a need, at least in me, that I had, that I couldn't fulfill in my culture. So I think it's very important to also to have to be open to these new things, that it will be character traits that will be revealed, or aspiration that will be revealed through this change. So this is very important, and they live together, which means that they share their kitchen. And when you share your kitchen with a German student, a Spanish student in psychology, an American student in data science, a Canadian student in politics, and you need to agree on what clean means, just that, it's already, a struggle, and we want them to struggle.
Yeah.
And the fact that they share their kitchens and live together is super important. That's one. That's the big journey. Then it's about learning. We use the flipped classroom. The flipped classroom means that we ask you, and it's more common in the British system, that you should do your homework first. So you need to go through your the learning material yourself, because in real life, as we know it, there are no teachers. So you better get prepared. So we do that progressively. We help them and tell them the ropes of how do you learn? How do you learn with AI? Because they have a lot of AI. We have a great AI hub and bots that help them learn. But the classroom is for relationship. The classroom, 15 students per classroom, no lecture hall. It's 100% small group teaching, and it's a relational pedagogy. Not only because they know the teacher and the teacher knows them, because the teacher at Forward College never teaches more than 70 students per year. In most universities, it's more 1,200.
Yeah.
3 courses of 400 students. So it's completely different. So they know them by their name. They know what are their strengths, their needs, their character, and so on. They also have tutorials, one-on-one tutorials. Every week they have one-on-one tutorial. So it's very relational, but also between the students. It's a lot about debating, how to disagree, but also in math, how you solve a problem together. And we know through research, thanks to research, that actually teamwork is extremely helpful in mathematics, because there are different ways to see a problem, right? So it's not only something for PIR students, it's also important in psychology, obviously, but also in the quant dimension. And that's why our students get very good results in the exams. Most of them go through the exams that are organized and graded by the LSE, which is obviously a demanding, but the experience of learning is really different. And the third reason why Forward College is different is that because we add on an academic layer, so often, so economics, mostly the social sciences, from data science to psychology, going through economics, business, political science. We add a layer of what we call leadership, or these emotional, social, and practical intelligences. And we do that through personal development, year one emotional intelligence. So year one social intelligence. How do you work in a team? Because that's something that they have to do. How do you reach out to people? It's so difficult for this generation to reach out in for real, right? Not in real life, not just send a message and wait for a possible answer or like. Um, it's I mean, you know what social intelligence is, and British people are quite good at that. That's my fond memory, and what I miss being back in Paris from 5 years in London is the art of the conversation, the art of the, how people reach out to someone they don't know while waiting in the line. It's
Mhm.
really amazing. Second year is about emotional intelligence, and third year it's about more influencing and leadership. And so personal development is one, and entrepreneurship is another one. So it's not entrepreneurship in the sense that you need to create your startup, but you start from an aspiration: water consumption, climate change, refugees. Often that's the kind of aspiration that students have. And they need to go from that. They're grouped by aspirations, similar aspirations, and they need to make something real and concrete out of this and demonstrate an impact at the end of the course. And we help them go through a methodology of design thinking to really understand what it is about, the problem that they want to solve, but they don't really understand what it is really, the problem that they want to tackle. And then to ideate and find solutions that are creative and better based on their research than what you would spontaneously do. And then prototype and actually test things with users, with their audience. And that's a fascinating journey. That's ocean racing. You start with big dreams and you end up with a small thing, but in the end, they are super proud of the little thing they have achieved, because it's very rare in education to have the opportunity to achieve something. And that's where you learn that actually making a difference is much more difficult than you thought. Thinking, learning derivatives, it's can be challenging, but it's way easier to actually make a difference in the world.
Yeah, and I love the way you've framed that, and you can see how exciting it is for people, and the idea of all those little changes amongst all of those people can really start to mount up, can't they? I mean, especially if you're working together on a project, and how that comes in. So I find that absolutely amazing. And how do people sort of get involved? You sort of mentioned so many people from around the world. What sort of age do they need to start sort of making contact? What sort of things do they need to be aware of before they sort of get in touch?
Yeah. So usually they start after A level or after 1 or 2 gap years in the Nordic countries. They tend to do 1 or 2 gap years. So between 18 and 20, they need to have good grades. I think we have an academic requirement that is not too high. I think it's ABB, but still it's really selected, because we want students. I mean, it's not because we have AI that we don't need smart people anymore, because we know that AI is an amplifier. And I would never say that now, intelligence is a commodity, so it doesn't have value. It still has value, because if you're smart, you use AI much more to amplify your thoughts. Um, they need to speak English because everything is in English, but they learn the local language in each city. And they need to have demonstrated some kind of commitment and engagement, be it in music, that they are aware that they are engaged in the world.
Mm.
I think that's the biggest thing. You cannot start ocean racing when you only think of the prestige of your degree and how you'll become an investment banker and so on and so forth. If you dream of being an investment banker, and I have many friends who are investment bankers, at 20, it means that it's not really your dream. You need to go, back to what is actually my dream. It's an artifact of, recognition, because you get money and so on. But what is your real dream? It's not like your life, you will earn a living with your dream, but still it's very important to consider at this age your life in an open way, because you will discover many things. And if you're set in your ways and you want to become an investment banker, I'm not sure what's the future of investment banking, but still, well, you should go somewhere else, I would say.
And in terms of how this sort of fits around the book, is does the book sort of give you that kind of all the things we've spoken about today, that framework, that understanding, the relationships and conversations that people are having in education, parents, students, so you sort of have that community sense of this is the importance, this is what we're thinking, this is what we're debating, and then you can see that flow as they get older.
Yeah, I think it really started with Forward College, and then the book was more a way to explicit what we're doing. But we started Forward College with this tagline, human intelligences, because we were already seeing in 2020 AI coming. Didn't anticipate Gen AI, obviously, but we knew that AI was already machine learning, or was already growing very fast. So that's the core idea of Forward College. But when Gen AI hit, I must say that it was, for us, it was an opportunity, not only because it drives people to ask bigger questions and better questions around education, as we were discussing in the beginning of the podcast, but also because it completely justifies our approach. Flipped classroom, if you are in a flipped classroom, AI is amazing at helping you understand and learn. It's really great as a tutor, but it's really, detrimental when you use it to fake your homework, right? So actually, it did help our model to have AI, and also to have the classroom being a relational place. I always say Forward College is about, because that's also something that you could think of in terms of the mission of education. There are not many things you could say without the risk of being, wrong. One thing you can say is, in the future, we need to be good at interacting, at leveraging technology and robots and AI. We'll also need to be good at creating relationships and interacting with humans in a positive way. Not many education systems are good at these two missions. It sounds very obvious, but it's not very good. So for us, having this very relational, community-based, living together, learning together in small teams, but also in the classroom without technology, and having AI to support their learning in the right order at the right place, it's the best approach. So for us, it was in a way a blessing to justify and to raise awareness about our model. And I will go one, if you allow me,
Of course.
just take one more minute to. That is something I discovered writing the book. The question of why do we learn? The reality is that the biggest steps, the biggest challenges that all humans overcome, it's walking and learning to speak your first language, your mother tongue, right? We have no books. We don't have teachers. We don't have exams. We don't have training. We do that out of love for our parents, because we want to get closer to them, because we want to interact with them. The core reason, the core engine of learning is human connection. Call that love when it's a toddler. Call that mimetism. Call that social comparison, competition, emulation, inspiration. This is human connection. And this is a driver of education. If we forget that, we will build crappy education. So that's why we have these moments in the classroom that are without technology. That's why they live together, because they emulate each other, and they also copy in a way each other. And I find this really exciting. And I must say that the level of engagement that our students have in the classroom is remarkable. And when we have an external speaker, they are always in awe with the level of engagement of our students. But because just they are human beings, and they are connected, and they want to, show that they know. So they are stimulated. So it's not about only, having a good AI or a good thing. No, it's about being in an environment that stimulates you as a human being.
I think you might have just answered the question that I've been looking for a long time, and that's the sense of, you see a toddler, and like you so sort of brilliantly put, it's that sense of they don't need to learn, and you don't need to teach them. It happens. You're counting steps. Let's say you're the mimicking, all of the stuff that happens when they're young. And I love the fact when I'm in a school, you see a sort of a 5, 6, 7 year old skipping down the corridor because they're just in love with life. And like you said, you then get to the point where you're not allowed to answer a question, and all that seems to diminish. And it's very easy to then sort of go through the parts of the conversation we've had about the fact that you just have to do school because you have to go, because it's compulsory, and this and all of those things. But I think the way you've managed to articulate that sense of, if you understand how, and that's probably the thing that I've realized here, how you're able to take that sort of beautiful sort of toddler innocence and natural learning and development as you then go through the aging process, because you're understanding it's still about the human connection, it's understanding it's about relationships. And even if it's your relationship with AI and learning and whatever those tools or situations are, you understand how that fits, and you then want to be adaptable, and you can see how that works for you today, like you say, in the relationships you have today, and each of those steps is going to take you into the future. Then all of a sudden it's not about recreating the wheel or doing things completely differently. It's just all these little course corrections, like you said, from that sort of nautical idea. We know what we're trying to do, and we're going to make those things happen. So it's absolutely fascinating to sort of hear that, but also then see how that's come into practice. Like I say, from a book point of view, from an intellectual point of view, from a practical point of view, actually having created college, that people understand why they're doing it, and how all those little things they do, like I say, from the way they interact in the classrooms and the relationships and where they actually spend their time, keeps that going into those sort of adolescent years and beyond. So I absolutely love that. So thank you for that.
And thank you for that as well. I love this moment at the end of the year, and we had that 1 week ago, when students award prizes to other students who have been so great at mentoring others and helping others and so on. And the testimonials that you read, it's really human matter. It's so touching to see this community being engaged in helping each other, how grateful they are, how graceful they can be, but you need to put them in the right environment. So the question of the culture of an education community is absolutely crucial. We tend to focus way too much on the content and not on the culture of the community. And the culture, it's obviously, people having a relationship, it's relational, but it's also symbolic. It's also behavioral, and it cannot be prescribed. So, but it can be influenced, and that's what we're doing. And we spend a lot of time thinking about, okay, what is the message that we want to share with them? What are the incentives that will make it stick? And that's really what matters to us. And if you have the right culture, if you get the culture right, then learning just, emerges, flows from that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, obviously, the acronym FAR is important to us here at Education on Fire. And by that, we mean feedback, inspiration, resilience, and empowerment. What is it that strikes you when you hear that? Is there one word that jumps out, or a couple of them, or collectively even?
Well, all of them. I love all of them. What is the least picked one?
Feedback, I would say, often is
Okay.
the least.
Okay, so I will go with feedback because they all inspire me, if I may say. I think going back to the culture, neither British people, I'm sorry to say, nor French people are very good at sharing feedback, and for radically opposite reasons, right? French are super rude, and maybe British people are not rude enough, at least for French standards. Maybe you understand each other, but I learned feedback through nonviolent communication. So Marshall Rosenberg, inspired by Gandhi, and feedback is really the human interaction by which you will tell me, Boris, I heard you spoke of me twice. It felt like, I was not listened to. And then you pause. You just state what happened, how it made you feel. not judging the other one, how it made you feel. And then you let an opportunity to the other one to express their, they might apologize, or they might say, "Oh, I was in such a hurry," or blah blah blah, whatever. But the discussion now is open, and you can express your needs, and each of you can express their needs. And it's such a powerful in education. It's such a powerful way to make education human, make education about the friction that we need to grow. We talk a lot about the frictionless, and there is no frictionless learning. Learning is always filled with friction. If there is no friction, you don't learn because we are lazy. Honestly, I mean, there are exceptions to that, but still. So I really love this idea that there is an art to give feedback that is nonviolent, that firstly talks about the one who gives the feedback to help the other one realize that what the impact it has on others. And then they need to adjust, find a way to adjust. And that's what we do in education. That's how we share in personal development. We teach them how to give and receive feedback. And that's really one of the most useful tools to keep on growing throughout your own lives.
It's such an important thing, and I think to understand that is really important. And I think understanding it then gives you the strength you often need to be able to receive it and give it in the way that you mentioned, which then becomes incredibly important. So, Boris, thank you so much. I think we could probably chat all afternoon, but we have to wrap it up there. But thank you so much for all those insights. We'll have links to the college and the book in the description as well. But is there one particular place you'd like people to go and visit, having heard all of this?
Well, I think the Forward College website, there is a page on vision if they want to connect more, kind of the big picture of our discussion and the specifics of Forward College, how it all comes together. I think it's a good starting point.
Lovely. Thank you so much indeed. And yeah, best of luck with it. And I hope so many people get involved, because it's what we need for the future, and the more that ripples across people's learning and then into our society at large, it's going to be a very positive thing. So yeah, thank you so much indeed.
And thank you so much, Mark, for giving me the opportunity to share these idea and hopefully try to get some influence and some more change out of education. Thank you.
Education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire.